to me about systemic racism. It exists, yes. We've known that. Who's dumb enough to feel it doesn't exist? Okay. Now, the poverty pimps and the victim pimps keep telling the victim to stay where they are. You're crippled, you can't walk, you can't get up, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm saying, you better get up. It is almost analgesic to talk about what the white man is doing against us. And it keeps a person frozen in their seat. Please, stop it. Stop your cursing. We want to ask the parent, stop yanking that child.
In a new book is Bill Cosby, right? University of Pennsylvania professor Michael Eric Dyson. He takes on the TV legend, and he also makes the case that Bill Cosby is too tough on lower-income African Americans. Professor Dyson, he joins us now. Professor Dyson, always good to see him. Thanks for being back on the program.
Always good to see you, my friend.
I don't think, Michael, and you and I have had some battles over the years.
Sure.
I don't even want to bring the race card into this in this respect. When he talks about, he makes some comments, and you highlight some of them in the book about kids and speaking English, for example, or the way they dress, their hats on backwards, quote, their pants down around their crack, etc.
Right.
Those are the words that are in your book. Isn't that advice for every kid in life, good, that they should be able to speak the language to the best of their ability, dress, have the dress of success, etc. Isn't that good advice for everybody?
Look, there's no denying that Mr. Cosby has a point when he says that people should dress for success, so to speak, that you should code switch. When you're among your friends, you should talk one way. When you're in corporate America, you should talk another. That's no problem. The point is, Sean, of course, he didn't end there. He made that a point in the context of a vicious assault upon poor people, acting as if their linguistic styles or their clothing and their manner of dress was the cause of their lack of success. And when I point to not only systemic social problems, yes, that Mr. Cosby refuses to talk about, but the fact is that improved behavior will never stop jobs from being exported. Improved behavior will never stop racial profiling. Improved behavior will never begin to set right the problems in society that prevent people from being successful. So there's no doubt that people should be responsible for their own lives, should take into consideration their own ethical and moral behavior, but they should also talk about the society in which we live that prevents people from being able to get a good education and being able to flourish as well as they should.
But even in one of the statements we just played, he recognized that these problems do exist. He wasn't denying it. But for example, when he said, quote, they're buying things for their kids, $500 sneakers, for what? And they won't spend $250 on Hooked on Phonics. And when he said that, he got a huge applause.
Let me address that. Let me address that.
Wait a minute. Is there some truth among some people? Even take race out of it. Is there truth that some people don't have the right priorities?
See, but you're making a very good point.
And what's wrong with somebody saying that?
No problem. See, but you're making a different point, Sean. See, what you're saying is that it's not race specific. You're saying this is universal characteristic that we find among people whose behavior. So here's the point. Then why, A, does Cosby make it race specific? But B, let me tell you why he makes it race specific. Because I think Mr. Cosby has forgotten that, A, when you talk about being hooked on phonics, first of all, that program never delivered what it promised to do. So they urge people to discontinue investing in. Number two, Mr. Cosby has been one of the supreme pitchmen for American corporate capitalism. Had he come along late enough, instead of Jell-O and Ford and Coca-Cola, he might have been promoting gym shoes and leisure wear.
Let me ask you this. Bill Cosby never made race an issue. He was the comedian, didn't even talk about race. Is that worthy of criticism? Would you criticize him for that?
Well, no, this is what my point is. My point of talking about Mr. Cosby's history is to say this. In the past, when people have asked him to speak about race, especially African-American people, he said, look, that is not my shtick. My shtick is to be a race-transcendent comedian who deals with universal values. He constantly said, look, I am not an expert on race. I am neither an expert on blackness. Now that when we ask you how all of a sudden, after 45 years, are you an ostensible and alleged expert on issues with which you have had no serious encounter and no ability to parse in the public arena?
Is he worthy of a book?
Oh, absolutely. I think that because the issues that he raised are serious. When he jumps on people for how they name their kids, how ridiculous is that? It's not Shanae and Shaniqua I'm worried about. It's Condoleezza and Clarence. Pookie might steal your car, but he would never commit acts of racial genocide.
What do you want to accomplish with this?
Well, I want people to see that it's much more complex than simply a knee-jerk reaction against poor people. Sean is right. We can talk about universal moral values that all people should have. Licentiousness is a problem that Paris Hilton has, but she will never be victimized. Mr. Cosby is mad at people in prison. He showed up in court with Martha Stewart to support her, and yet he's mad at a black kid for stealing a pound cake and $5 of Coke. I tell you, that's deeply problematic, and I want this book to spark that engagement and to talk about these issues.
All right. Michael, all the best with the book. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, my friend.
We'll be debating it for days and weeks and months to come.
forward to
And coming
coming
up
back.
next, the first.